Hey, hey, can you not be so needy? Can you not be so needy? Well, welcome back to the, I guess, sixth episode of the Simple Jargon podcast. My name's Allister. This is Peter, and we're here to discuss whatever Peter has on the agenda because I don't seem to be particularly good at finding things to talk about.
Whatever.
So, what's happened in the world this week?
Well, what's happening is kind of interesting. You know how some while back there was kind of like a bunch of zombie movies.
Oh,
Seemed to
yeah.
be like a trend. And now we have all these apocalyptic movies. You have this movie How It All Ends. You have Leaving It All Behind with Julia Roberts and Ethan Hawke. And now you have the Civil War movie coming out that everybody's talking about lately on the media because the situation we kind of where we at right now, that such a division and things are just getting more and more kind of divided. There seem to be no compromise, and lots of people talking about that movie Civil War lately. That's coming out sometime in next, I don't know how soon, but soon. There's a trailer for it out already. So it's been kind of interesting that you have these trends. And for some reason, these trends seem to be very, coming up lately. So yeah, I'm kind of curious what our
So,
universe trying to tell us.
so I don't understand. Is this like a historical
No, no,
drama
it's like a
about the
civil
Civil
war right
War,
now
or
in a present. When the Florida secede and West somehow secede, there is a civil war going on in the United States right now.
who? And it's a Hollywood flick?
Yeah, yeah. Well, look it up. When
Interesting.
you have a chance, look up
Okay.
the trailer
Yeah, yeah.
and
I
look
guess I'll
it
have
up.
to.
But it's just kind of
Interesting.
interesting that
I mean,
it's that that's something that seem to be touching lots of people because many people feel we are kind of in a some kind of conflict right now. Right now it's all manifest through media and some and through judicial system. When the judicial system became very weaponized against people right now, and but that kind of movie seem to be touched lots of people, in
right.
some ways, or seem to be
Yeah.
like, touching, we understand for whatever reasons, we understand the reasons,
Right.
because, um, watching that turning point, like 4 day conference, all these candidates there, like there was probably like at least, I don't know, 50 people speaking or more, and almost all the people like that we kind of know or follow or know about them or are prominent in politics and stuff or businesses were speaking there, and their talks were really like, how would you call it? I try to find a word for it, but like, calling for action when, they saying, okay, uh, we cannot sit back anymore and pretend like, everything is okay. We have to really, step up because our future is at stake. Like the way that the things are politically unwinding and all these different things that are coming up with it. So it's just interesting, that I thought was that we have all these movies coming up lately and also series too about ending the war and stuff. So um, it's kind
Like
of
very doom and
interesting.
gloom. And like
Yeah, yeah.
they go through waves. Like the zombie things come and go, and then we had, the apocalyptic movies back in close to 2012 because you had all those people that believed in the Mayan calendar being a prediction of the end of times, and so it's like
Uh-huh.
you get these like little spikes of interest in things in in it, but it's I get what you're saying. It's interesting, the alignment of reality this time with the kinds of films that they're putting out, which is kind of
Right.
I find myself very, very disconnected from that kind of stuff. Like you know that years ago, I if a movie was coming out, I knew about it. I knew who the director was. I knew the actors in it. I knew, like, it was something that I was passionate about, filmmaking and the current cinema and historical movies and all those kinds of things. I I couldn't tell you what movies are set to be released right now, what movies have come out in the last couple of years. I've certainly watched some newer movies. Occasionally, it comes out on Netflix or something like that, and I'll watch them, or I have a suggestion from someone, or Jay hands me a flash drive and says, "Watch it," for crying out loud. Like, so I do get exposed to some movies, but I don't seem to have any interest in, like, looking for them. And then even now with Daily Wire, and those guys kind of coming out with their own film stuff to try and kind of combat it, I still don't really have an interest, which is odd, because I assumed I would always have an interest in narrative storytelling, and I do still. I don't really seem to have the same
Well,
interest in.
it could also be that there is not many good movies out there. I mean,
That's
literally,
what I think.
I go through
But
I go through 20, 30 movies, and one of them might be decent, you know? Like this latest movie from Hollywood, something about, oh my gosh, like a big saga is going to be, I forgot what this just came up, the episode, I forgot the name of it now. Oh my goodness, can't think of the
Hunger
name.
Games, that one?
No, not the Hunger. The Hunger Games was awful, but that movie is awful, And then this is a new one. There's kind of like something like the Star Wars type of thing, big Hollywood production, all this big action and all that. But the movie itself, it's just awful. You know what I mean? Any kind of
You talking
real
about?
quality to the story is awful.
Are you talking about Napoleon?
No. It's like Star Wars type of thing.
Editing room, Allister here. I'm just interrupting this very, very briefly. Sorry we rambled so long about a movie we didn't actually mention, but after the fact, I'm positive I figured out what movie Peter was talking about. And, oh boy, it is really bad. I'm not going to play very much of this, but this Rebel Moon movie, yeah. Anyway, back to the podcast.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no. So, and that's the other thing is, again, 10 years ago, if you asked me, I'd have been excited about just about anything. I even forgave Jar Jar Binks, and still loved Star Wars franchise and all those kinds of things. And since Disney took over, like, I literally just stopped watching them. There's entire series like the Rogue One and Mandalorian and all those kinds of. I've never seen them. I just don't have an interest.
I tried.
It's
so bad that I could not get over through the first episode. So yes, it's just bad. A new Dark Reacher is
like
out.
and I really liked that series. Chelsea didn't care for it as much, which is why I haven't started watching the new season yet, simply because it's not something that we'll probably watch together. And anyway, so that's it. We, for whatever reason, though, in this household cannot get enough, like, cooking contest shows to consume. I don't know why. That's just, if there's a show that's a cooking contest, with the exception of a couple where the hosts are just cringe,
right.
We, for whatever reason, I can't get enough of it. Like, I love watching those kinds of shows. Chelsea definitely is okay with it, because I can put those on anytime and we'll consume like an entire series over the course of a week or two. So
my mom keeps watching.
I don't know why.
She loves those. So yeah.
It's something that appeals to me. Like, as particular, I'm also someone that genuinely loves to cook. I just hate cleaning.
Right.
Like that's what
See, I can
I
see
would
you.
cook every day.
I
What-
I can see you in that show, like you being the cook and have two assistants to clean after you.
Oh man,
The chef
they would
Allister
need
and
like an
team.
entire team just to,
Yeah.
because
And
I go into the kitchen to cook like biscuits, and half an hour later it looks like a bomb went off in the kitchen. Like I am incapable
yeah.
of cleaning up while I'm working or any of those kinds of all the stuff that makes kitchen life bearable. I cannot do it,
Right.
but I love cooking, right? And I can't
Uh-huh.
always expect. And we kind of have an unwritten rule here in the house that if you cook, then the other one will kind of clean up, you know. So I often volunteer to cook because I don't want to have to do the cleaning. Anyway, I don't know why we're talking about this, but it's kind of amusing, and it's just it's one of those kinds of media where some people will watch chiropractors cracking bones on YouTube for hours on end. Luckily, I don't have
Yes.
that
Mhm.
issue.
Or
I don't
pimple-
consume some of
pimple
that
picking,
stuff. That kind of stuff,
which
yeah,
is
yeah.
even worse.
But if it's a cooking show,
Yeah.
I'm done for. Or if Gordon Ramsay's in it, done. So anyway, I found that kind of amusing.
One of the interesting thing, I was watching that Patrick Davis show, and they have a new lady on the show. She seemed to be pretty cool. But the thing that I watched was there is that I forgot the name of the guy, and I really liked him. And he was talking about the same thing that I was talking about. He's saying how the Democratic Party, whoever's behind it, are brilliant. And then he named all these different things that they pulled for the last 8 years, or strategies to somehow get ahead. It's almost like, if there would be some smart person behind it, kind of think of any way they could try to do that would get them ahead. Does it make sense what I'm saying? And he named like a bunch of them. I kind of think half of them, but they are all the big ones that from the elections to different, Hillary, doing things, and then
Like Pelosi, Schumer, like all those
all the
guys?
different things.
Is that
That
what you
just
mean?
was incredible. He sees the same thing that I see, at least, So at least I'm not the only one kind of imagining it. I just wish there would be more people, to kind of have that kind of understanding, So that was kind of neat. I kind of really like that I'm not the only one, So that was good, But on the most serious note, the thing that's going on lately is that they try to, prevent Trump running in Colorado, and now
Oh,
the other
yeah.
states are jumping in, and
So
they want to do the same thing.
and yeah, that kind of happened. That happened almost like the day after we recorded the last episode. So like that's been in my mind enough throughout the week that it almost kind of feels like old news. That's why I didn't think to mention it. But yes, of course, that's the big news since since the last time we sat down and recorded something was this push by Colorado's Supreme Court to tentatively remove Trump from the ballot. And I just want to lay out kind of what happened for context, and then we can discuss it, because I can't imagine by the time this video gets out, there isn't somebody watching that doesn't kind of know what happened. But in the rare instance that one person needs to know what the hell happened. So a Colorado judge effectively said, yeah, Trump can't be on the ballot, a la the 14th Amendment. And then that went up to the Supreme Court because a judge really can't rule on something like that. There's very, very specific reasons why a state judge cannot even, he can't reference the 14th Amendment as a justification. No, yeah. So you're right. But long story short, it gets to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court of Colorado kind of rubber stamps it and says yes. Although it's a very split decision. Of the 7 justices there, 4 of them went for it, and 3 of them wrote dissenting opinions about it and were mortified that this was happening. So there's actually 3 really, really good, well-written dissenting opinions about it. So this isn't like even, and this is 7 liberal judges. It's not like Colorado's got a couple of like overtly conservative, Republican, old school, whatever you want to call it, judges. That's not the case. There were 3 that you might think on political lines would totally be going with this, but as principled judges, we're kind of like, this is not right. This is unconstitutional. So what they did is they referenced the 14th Amendment, something that in the 14th Amendment, it's very clear the only people who can exercise the power dictated by the 14th Amendment is Congress. That's it. So right off the hop, this isn't something that makes any sense. Colorado, as a state level, cannot reference the 14th Amendment as a justification for removing someone from the ballot because they do not have that power, number one. Then number 2, Trump was not convicted of anything. He hasn't even been charged for insurrection, let alone convicted of it. So there's 2 painfully obvious reasons why this isn't right. It's unconstitutional and inevitably is going to be overruled by the actual Supreme Court. But they know that. And that's the thing that I hope any viewers who don't know this already understand is they suspended the decision immediately because they knew it's unconstitutional. I don't understand what game they're really playing long term, but they knew this isn't going to work because when the Colorado Supreme Court issued the judgment, they said, we're suspending this judgment till basically the day before the deadline to put somebody on the ballot. And then they said, we will suspend it indefinitely if Trump, for any reason, which of course he's going to, appeals the decision. So they issued the decision, basically, as far as I can tell, so that the media has that clip to run with. Colorado Supreme Court removed Trump from the ballot. Dun, 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 dun. And they're ignoring the fact that that same Supreme Court, knowing this isn't constitutional and isn't going to hold up, said, but we're not going to hold this judgment until the day before the proceedings, like the official registration date for the ballot. And then if Trump in any way appeals the decision, we'll just suspend it indefinitely.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So what you're saying is that you did this and it's not, you can't remove him from the ballot. You know you can't. But the media now gets to run with that headline, Trump's been removed from the ballot.
Yes. It was a huge media.
Anyway, so that's the basic, in longer than I probably should have taken to explain it, but that's the basics of what happened. So
yes, that
now,
that blitz, Allister,
what are your
the
thoughts?
media, that was shocking, because all these people that chimed in, some of them even like politicians and stuff, like were really like, okay, this is a done thing, and it's the right thing. And it kind of blows your mind that they would not take more time to even, look into it before they say things that are so definite. That's what kind of, like, I cannot believe how they can get away with it, just to say that when, it's so far from, being like even done thing or truth, So yeah, I just don't get it, that the length they can go into to say that. So maybe it was just to create more and more, the news. Now, it might backfire on them, because now Georgia, Arizona, and Texas, I believe, are planning to file the same thing against Biden, to take him away, from the ballot.
And see, this is the kind of this is what frustrates, I think, a lot of people about politics in general, about American politics. And then I can definitely say the same thing about Canadian politics. When you take a step back and you look at it, it just feels like kids bickering on a schoolyard, about inconsequential stuff, but there's this super cut that was released on TikTok a couple of days ago as well, that I've seen some videos referencing. And it's basically like a kind of a super cut of the Democrats making statements between 2016 and 2020 about the DOJ being used against Biden by Trump. And this is some kind of whatever, and then juxtaposed with the clips of them now talking about the like what the DOJ is doing in a positive light, in trying to remove or indict Trump and doing all those kinds of things. So it's very obvious, but it's just like it's just cutting from one count, like one side of the coin to the other side of the coin, of these same kind of people making the opposite statements. So painfully obvious. We've
Right.
seen it in politics forever. But the thing that frustrates me the most about it is that you then have all of these talking head conservatives who are pointing at this video as more proof to justify what they're doing. And it makes me kind of cringe a little bit, because there's part of me that's like, you guys are saying that Biden's wrong now for doing it, but that Trump was right then for doing it. Like, that it doesn't make sense to me. Like, how do you not see the hypocrisy in what you're saying? Regardless of
Right.
like regardless of the guilt of any party associated, when you're talking
Well,
about something principled, like should the Department of Justice on behalf of a current president do an investigation against his possible rivals, and in so many ways, if the DOJ wasn't already doing an investigation in them because of suspicions of criminal activity, then obviously not, they shouldn't be doing it on behalf of a current president against their political rivals. So either there was a legitimate investigation that was being done independent of any requests from the president in either case, or the president did request this investigation. And Republicans can't have their cake and eat it too. The Democrats are either wrong in doing this, and Trump was wrong then in doing it, or vice versa. And that's the part that I don't like. It's showing the hypocrisy, and then talking heads that should be able to intellectually put two and two together, that hypocrisy goes both ways, point at it and be like, see, we're justified. Let's see Biden indicted. And it's either you believe this kind of thing should be handled 100% in the ballot box, or you believe that the DOJ should be investigating criminal activity that it suspects then. And let's go away. And regardless of that, whether or not the president should be pointing a finger at the person that should be investigated, that be the catalyst for departments within the DOJ to pursue an investigation. Right? Anyway, it's like the same thing. This hypocrisy pops up so often.
Right. Remember that movie with Will Ferrell about the elections? I'll try to think of the name of it now. When he was fighting with that, what's that Greek guy? Oh my gosh. When they kind of have a fight over the election.
Will Ferrell?
Yeah, Will Ferrell. Yeah. Oh my God, that movie is wild. The comedy. What's the name of it now?
Is it The Campaign?
Yes, I think it's called Campaign or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah. It's just wild. And kind of start to more and more look like that. What the other side's going to come up with, just to kind of, it's like, but what's scary about it is that I would say probably 80% of the American population vote by what they see on different news. They don't really look at what the issues are. They don't really look at the, what the truth is. Like, one of our friends in Canada totally hates Vivek. And
okay.
I can only think of the reason is because the way he kind of came aggressive on the, some of those debates. And in Canada, I don't do that. You're polite. You know what I mean? And
wow.
So the whole...
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
So the whole impression, of that now is that, they totally hate Vivek because they think that he's like the bully, and rude and all that. When it's just, so do you understand like how people would vote very often just on perceptions or what media feeds them or how they feel about if you give them the right clip rather than what the truth is. That's what scares me a lot, It's just, oh, I don't like that person because I got that impression from this, but they don't, unfortunately, educate themselves. So yeah, it's going to be interesting.
And then and then the
Yeah, go ahead.
hilarious nature that every single group is sitting there kind of like let's just be fair and pretend from an overtly conservative perspective. You got those people who like will point at liberals and say, "Oh my God, they'll believe anything CNN tells them or anything MSNBC. Ugh, such sheep." And then they turn around and put on Fox. You know, it's like
Right.
both sides. Like they'll point at the other side and be like, "What an echo chamber you live in," and then proceed to walk into their own echo chamber. And it's amusing and sad kind of all at the same time. It's the human nature of it all, you know.
Okay. Well, anyway, the Vivek, he's just a machine. He does like 12, town halls a day. He's just like really running from place to place, try to talk to people, and he seemed to have a good response. And I still, probably from all the people, that are out there, I like him the most. Now, what was very interesting is, we talked about Redacted, and I don't think so you ever watched that show.
No. I mean,
No?
I've been exposed to it from time to time, but it's not something that I watch regularly, no.
Okay. What was very interesting that they had a Vivek on just a few days ago, asked him the specific question about, the Israel and what's happening in Gaza right now, and many people, including UN, and now are concerned about genocide going on there because so many innocent people are getting killed along, maybe some of those fighters, and um, the Redacted. They have some people. They have this guy. I forgot his name now. That he's been one of those commissions when they were looking like for UN inspector. He was when they were looking for weapons in Iraq, and then he told that no, there's no weapons there, but they ignore him anyway, and pretending they are weapons just to have a justification for war. And he was talking about it, and they were the next day commenting on the Vivek statements, because Vivek said that no, there is no genocide and Israel has the right to defend. Totally 100% behind Israel, not even flinch. And the Redacted and the other gentlemen, they were talking about that this is something they have to 100% disagree with Vivek, and they are very disappointed that that is the position he would take. And so outside of that one position that he seems to be just 100% without any question behind the Israel, all the other issues that he seemed to be spot on. I'm just kind of surprised that he just with all the issues that are out there, he always seemed to have be willing to have talk about it, a little bit explore it, point things out. But with this issue, he just goes immediately 100% behind, no even question, no debate, nothing, Very interesting. I'm just curious, why would be that, in his his position, not even consider the, what is going on for so long, the situations. There's not just a one side, to it. So that was interesting to me, I'm sad that he would, take position like that, not considering both sides. So in kind of, how we talk about that, there's always, there's so many things we like about certain people, and they come up with something, you just, makes you so disappointed. I guess that's one of them.
The reason I kind of don't know what to say is because I know that I think you and I, this is one of those things that I think you and I probably don't see completely eye to eye on. And I don't know if that's the conversation we want to have right now. But just as devil's advocate, any position that he has to take right now, we have to remember he's taking in light of trying to be elected as president of the United States, a sovereign nation recognized internationally that he would be the head of government for. So in that, there kind of has to be a solemn recognition that other countries you expect to recognize you diplomatically are themselves recognized. And so it puts someone like that at a very interesting position, because you kind of almost have to remove the ethical debate about Israel's existence, the current condition in Gaza and in the West Bank, and all of those kinds of things, and recognize that Israel is a country. Whether or not you believe it should be, whether or not things that are happening within it you agree with, like all of those considerations have to be removed. It's a country. It has been for 50 plus years. There isn't a button to undo that, nor should that button be within the power of the United States. So that's all I'm kind of pointing out, is like, to some degree, he kind of has to remove his personal opinions about it and say, what would a head of government for the country do when asked about another sovereign nation's right to defend themselves from a terrorist organization operating within its borders? And I'm not saying Palestinians are terrorists. I'm talking specifically about Hamas. This isn't a conversation about whether or not Palestinians largely agree with Hamas or disagree with it. Like, all of those are conversations to be had. But he's running for president to represent on an international state, the United States. And you can't really do that by then pretending any country you choose to isn't really a country. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, without making any judgments about what you and I would want in this situation, does that kind of make sense, that his hands are kind of cuffed in that sense?
Yes. Well, at least good positive thing on that is that what he's saying, that the United States should not be involved. And they should not be involved
Right.
giving them money, not should be involved giving them weapons. They should be their war. United States can express diplomatic support, for it, if they feel it's justified, but they should not be directly involved.
Did they then use that opportunity to then re-inquire with him about his stance on Taiwan?
No, not current one. So I don't know what's happening on that.
Why not? Because I believe you and I also remember Vivek very clearly saying that the United States should support Taiwan if China seeks to invade it, and da 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 da.
Yes, I
remember him saying that.
Way back, he was saying things like that. Yes, but nobody brought it up.
It was one of the first times where you.
Lately, it's not like, because it's so many other things going on, so people don't really talk about it. You know what I mean? But yes, that was one of his stand, was that we have to defend them because right now we depend on them on our chips. So yes.
So his justification. Oh, that's right. I forgot that his justification was, in his eyes, something that he could somehow link to like national security or
right,
the effectiveness of the
economy. We are technology dependent on the chips. Yeah,
it's a shame. It's almost like maybe we should make those here. And
they're trying to. Remember, they're building mega plant here in Arizona and Phoenix to make chips. Except I was reading,
I think the United States,
because they cannot find qualified, trained people to work in that factory. So they keep postponing, keep running it because they cannot find trained people here. And technologies.
No doubt. It's inherently part of the problem, though, too, is that the government's involved in it. And that's going to sound just like, oh, here's that uber capitalist talking again. But
but Allister, isn't it interesting though, that being this is a technology of the future, all these chips and all this stuff, all this technology that's coming up with artificial intelligence, and we seem to be as a country so behind in research and manufacturing that stuff. Why it's not
Not
done here?
research, but manufacturing. I don't think we're behind in the research end of it.
Hopefully,
That's
I
kind
would
of the
be,
problem is we focus
hopefully that
so heavily.
that would be the case. Yes.
I mean, in large part, significant arms of almost every single one of those companies doing a lot of that serious research in chip technology, they have arms in China, again, because the production side of things are there. And that makes you kind of worry about the CCP's involvement, those kinds of things. But that's a conspiracy theory for another day. The thing that I think kind of worries me about when the reason why chips aren't made in the United States is because it's cheaper to make those chips outside of the United States. That short answer, done. That's the answer to that. There isn't a way, there is no historical precedent in any way for making it more efficient to create those chips in America than elsewhere by having the government be involved. It's never happened, won't ever happen. There's no way you can make something more efficient by involving a government bureaucrat to dictate who gets a budget, what money should be spent on what, all those kinds of things. So that's the part that kills me, is like the United States has objectively recognized that we have an issue when, if everything in the world blew up right now and we actually had legitimate enemies on the world stage that we needed to potentially deal with, we'd be screwed, because everything that we need that's made in China right now, China would likely be our number one enemy. And how do we get all that stuff? So that's a really, really screwed up position to be in. But that we're recognizing it is awesome. That the government wants to be the one that says, I got you, fam, like, and take care of the problem is horrifying, because it never freaking works. And that's like, the fact that the government is involved in any capacity with this idea of let's invest a lot of money in making these chips at home guarantees that factory isn't going to be efficient. I promise. Right. This isn't, I would put so much money on it.
Honestly, absolutely right.
It has to be private.
Right. Look what's happening with electric vehicles. Such a huge push from the government, millions of dollars put into companies to subsidize them here in the United States, and most of them failing, those companies. And now I'm reading that even some of that partially succeeded, because I don't count Tesla. Tesla just is doing really good, and they seem to, having subsidies, but they kind of really seem to be pushing their own way as much as they can. Okay. And it shows. But all these other companies like Ford and stuff, I'm reading now every second day article about the dealers, and they don't want to, and even the manufacturers like Ford, they don't want to keep producing those vehicles because they don't believe there is a market for it. It's not cost effective, but they're being pushed by the government to do that. So exactly what you're saying might happen with the chips is really happening now in the EV vehicles, and the technology. It's just been bizarre, the amount of money that the government keeps throwing at those companies, just to make it like the environmental friendly. So it's just a strange push here in the United States that it's hard to understand, where it's even coming from. Who's pushing that agenda, in the United States, for God's sake, when, we should know better. There's a business people here. They should know better,
It feels so obvious that it hurts, that even people who would step back and say, oh, but even Tesla benefits from this, don't see that Tesla's not in the grand big picture benefiting from the fact that the government's throwing subsidies and tax incentives, not just at companies, but at individual consumers and all those kinds of things. That there is an argument to say, is Tesla selling more vehicles now than they might otherwise be if the government wasn't providing these kinds of incentives? Of course, Tesla is selling more vehicles now because of that. Are those vehicles, in the grand scheme of things, better or more useful to the economy and to the people who are using them now as a result of that increase in sales? No. Because if you take a step back and think, like, what does an electric vehicle require that the current United States doesn't have? It's an infrastructure to support electric vehicles. We're not just talking about charging points, because that's not really an efficient way of charging an electric vehicle, is to run it dead and then go sit somewhere for a couple of hours or however long it takes with the fast chargers these days. It's still not efficient. Like, people will opt for a gas powered car because you can fill the tank in 10 minutes max, including your bathroom break, right? Like, it's not comparable. So what it would really require, if the government wasn't involved, is a company that makes electric vehicles, but then also invests in the infrastructure that will allow their product to be useful, which means Tesla probably would not have been selling vehicles all over the United States right away, because they would have had to isolate themselves to core markets where they could also invest or partner with companies that would invest in an infrastructure that supported those vehicles. So those vehicles are not just revolutionary and groundbreaking, they're freaking useful. It's so important that those two things go hand in hand. But instead, the government gets involved, throws out all these incentives. All the car manufacturers want to get on board doing it as well. And people aren't seeing that that's actually just holding us back. It's preventing the innovation or like the investment in the actual infrastructure that matters. Because, again, now you have bureaucrats dictating what infrastructure should be.
Right, exactly.
Like, look at a map of all the charging points in the United States and try and figure out how much of your tax money was spent on all of those, because every single one of them got investment or tax write-offs or all those kinds of things. They're basically paid for by taxpayers, either initially or over the course of operation. The taxpayer is footing the bill for that stuff.
Yes, I was saying something about a few months ago that the government somehow is going to pay for hundreds of those charging stations put here in Flagstaff area in Arizona or something. So it's.
When if you even talk to anybody who's in those electric car industries, like recumbent or trickle charging is undoubtedly the answer. It is a massive change in infrastructure. You have to invest in changing the roads themselves. But there's no reason why, if you want your infrastructure to run on electric, that we don't have the technology. And there could be other amazing solutions out there. This is just one obvious one, that if a private company was required to do this and invest in the infrastructure to do this, it would have to be cost efficient, because they're not getting incentives from the government to bail them out when they make really, really bad. Like, it would have to be efficient. It would have to be a profitable business model to do it, and it would be sustainable that way. But that kind of trickle charging where your car is charging as you're driving down the road, we have the technology to do that. Yes, you would have to redo the roads. But that's what I mean. It's like, when the government's throwing money at people, you don't really have an incentive to do the truly innovative, revolutionary things that are going to make it so that this new technology is viable into the future.
See, here's such a good point, Allister. I wish they would never bring this technology up until they would have some technology they could charge as you're driving, or as you park, and somehow just charging. You know what I mean? Just have a technology that's solves that problem rather than what we have now. You know what I mean? What's such a good point. They should never even have them until they would have actually some kind of system that would do that, or technology to do that. Yeah. I'm kind of surprised.
But Tesla, for example, would have a very they would have a vested interest in producing the infrastructure that would make their cars available to people, efficient to people, useful to them. So why does the government feel that they need to do it? You know what I mean? Right. And then people always just to end my little rant, but people always point at the United States. One of the revolutionary things that happened that made modern life possible in the United States is the highway interstates that existed for 30 years, largely without being used. And people just forget that in history. FDR and the New Deal spent inordinate amounts of taxpayer money building an infrastructure to places that didn't need it yet. Now, that they make use of it now is irrelevant. They didn't need it then, and when they needed it, local companies that wanted to operate there would have invested in that infrastructure. It's not like those roads and that stuff wouldn't have existed if the government didn't build them in the 30s and 40s. They 100% would have eventually. They just wouldn't have sat for 30 years not being used because we invested all this money. The government telling people we're the ones responsible for all this infrastructure. Businesses, you don't worry about this. You just pay us all this money in taxes. Government's got you.
Yes.
And so many inefficiencies, and not just inefficiencies that we can gripe about, like, I don't like my taxes being used for that, but literal stagnation in business industries.
Yes.
You're like holding their hands and be like, don't you be innovative and productive. Don't you do it, because that's not your job to invest in the infrastructure. You just make the electric car.
Right.
You know, it's not a smart business model.
Many business people talk about it lately a lot, that government just intervening so much now that you don't anymore have any industry that you can run without government stepping into it so much. It's almost impossible to run unless you get them somehow involved, or you're involved in it, or obey by, it's just became like weird for United States to go that direction again. It's supposed to be a free country.
Right.
And now it's centralized so much that it's like totally changed from what it was, even more. And there was always government subsidy, government control, but now it took it became so much that you cannot really run almost any industry without government being involved in it. It's just, it's just
whether through regulations and licensing, or in order to be competitive, you require their kind of subsidies or inputs into your industry, because every other company is taking it, and if you don't, then you can't compete. Like it hinders so many people, and it makes me. This is my one little joke. It's the one thing that the French have given us. It's my little joke, because I always like to poke fun at the French for whatever reason. I had a history teacher when I was young that had this comedic disdain for the French, and it's kind of held over. Not really. Like, I love French people, but it's funny to make those kinds of jokes. Like, how many wars have the French won? 2, the French Revolution and the French Civil War. How many Frenchmen does it take to defend Paris? We don't know. It's never been done. But long story short, that's one thing that a lot of people don't know about the concept of capitalism, and it comes down to this exact thing. It's like this great story. I'm going to brutalize it and shorten it really, really quick, but it's the origins of the term laissez-faire capitalism. And most people are like, wow, what does that mean? That the French government literally got a bunch of business people and guildsmen and all those kinds of things together and said, we're the government, we're here to help. Hey, what can we do for you? And then the only response they got was, keep your hands off. That's laissez-faire, hands off, capitalism. It was the government is literally there saying, business people, what can we do to make your life better? And their response was, just leave us alone. Just leave us alone to do our business, to operate, to don't get involved. Keep your hands off. It's such a simple concept that in the most quote unquote overtly capitalist country in the world, nobody seems to understand. The solution to every single problem is to try and get the government to solve the problem for you, the antithesis of a capitalist country. But anyway,
I will have to. There's one more thing that's kind of going to be part of what we just talked about now, but I will have to go. I have to get going. Talking about the government being inefficient, there's big uproar in Chicago right now, because I guess they got some numbers for how much they're spending on those, on that illegal immigrants coming into Chicago, and it was like something like $7 million in a month or something. But what they are really upset about, people, is that they contracted some companies that provide the care and for them, and they're charging at the minimum $50 up to $160 per hour to do that for people to work in those positions. with some of them, like some of them, they were giving example nurse making $20,000 in a week.
Yeah.
And so people are outraged in Chicago because they cannot get a penny, local people from government, to help them with anything. And here they, just spending, incredible amount of money wastefully. Not even employing local. Now they are upset, and they start going to employ, because the people are upset. They might start employing local people to do that work. It's just.
And I know this is like a local funding thing largely, but in the grand, like, big picture of stuff, at least we can sit back and think to ourselves, thank God, at least this is only being done after Lahaina got rebuilt, or after East Palestine got rebuilt, because those places got taken care of, right, before we started throwing money at immigrants.
Yeah.
Illegal immigrants to boot.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure.
They for sure did. They for sure did.
Anyways,
yes.
All right. All right. Well, this is another great rant and tangents of the Simple Jargon podcast. I guess until next week, and hopefully I can get on the editing schedule. There won't be months of delay between when we record these and when people see them. With any luck, I'll put a little thing here right now, right here, that tells you the amount of time between when this was recorded and when you're finally seeing it online. All right. Have a great day, everyone.
Right. See ya.